Are you out of your mind? I promised this money to my mom, my husband yelled, ripping all my savings right out of my hands. My mother-in-law had already grabbed the $50,000 and headed for the exit, but she froze in her tracks when the front door swung open. But before we begin, I'd like to ask you to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you, and enjoy the story. Valerie spent her morning checking orders for her online cosmetics store while sipping coffee at the kitchen table. Outside her third-floor window, the roofs of the neighboring suburban houses were covered in a crisp October frost. Her phone buzzed nonstop with notifications from buyers. They were ordering creams and serums for the upcoming holidays. Another 12 orders overnight, she noted with satisfaction, scrolling through the alerts. Her store, Boundless Beauty, had been running for 4 years and brought in a stable income. Valerie put her heart and soul into the business. She studied new market trends, built relationships with suppliers, and personally replied to every customer. Her savings grew slowly but steadily. Every month, she transferred a percentage of her profits into a dedicated savings account. Her goal was ambitious, to save $50,000 to expand the business. She wanted to lease a small office space, hire an assistant, and launch her own signature line of cosmetics under the store's brand. Dreams only become reality for those willing to work for them. Valerie reminded herself as she crunched the numbers on her tablet. She was painfully close to her magic number. The account balance currently sat at $48,700. She had bought her 2-bedroom condo in a new development before getting married, taking out a 15-year mortgage. Back then, 15 years felt like an eternity. Now, she only had 3 years left to pay it off, and the place would be entirely hers. The condo was in a quiet neighborhood, with a school, a daycare center, and a shopping plaza nearby. It was ideal for a young family. She had married Oliver Vane 2 years ago. They met at a holiday party hosted by mutual friends. He worked as a project manager for a construction firm, made a decent salary, and seemed reliable and serious. Oliver knew how to court her beautifully. He brought flowers, took her to nice restaurants, and said all the right things about their future together. After the wedding, he moved into her condo. He took over half the utility bills, helped pay for groceries, and never interfered with her growing business. Valerie was happy in her marriage. Her husband didn't try to control her, didn't demand financial reports, and supported her entrepreneurial goals. The only irritating factor was the visits from her mother-in-law. Teresa Vane, a 62-year-old widow, lived alone in a small apartment across town. She was on a modest fixed income, so Oliver regularly helped his mother out financially. Valerie understood this and didn't object. A son should take care of his aging parents. But her mother-in-law visited far too often and stayed far too long. She might show up on a Saturday morning and not leave until Sunday evening. Valerie would lose entire weekends she had planned to dedicate to her online store. Teresa demanded attention. She wanted to be entertained, cooked her favorite meals, and shown new movies. "Ollie, what are all these folders doing on the table?" her mother-in-law would ask, inspecting Valerie's documents. "It's all numbers and calculations. Looks awfully complicated. Those are business plans, Teresa," Valerie would patiently explain. "I'm planning to expand the store." "Why expand? Isn't family more important than money? It's time to start thinking about babies, not all these silly business plans." These conversations happened regularly. Her mother-in-law firmly believed a married woman should dedicate her time to her home and her husband, not play businesswoman. Valerie held her tongue, not wanting to cause a rift in the family, but she internally bristled at the remarks. Lately, Teresa had been coming over even more than usual. It used to be once every 2 weeks. Now she was there every single weekend. Oliver explained that his mother was getting older, felt lonely, and needed family time. "You have to understand, honey, she gave her whole life to working and raising kids," her husband would say. "Now that she's retired, her friends have moved away. The neighbors are all young. She has no one to talk to. We're her only outlet." Valerie would nod and agree. In theory, it sounded reasonable. In practice, the constant visits were a test of her nerves, especially when Teresa started snooping around the condo, looking in closets, and interrogating her about purchases and expenses. That October Tuesday, Valerie received a highly anticipated text alert from her bank. The funds from a large wholesale order had cleared, pushing her savings up to exactly $50,000. Goal achieved. She could finally set her expansion plans into motion. She immediately called the commercial realtor she had been speaking with about leasing an office downtown. A 250-square-foot space on the ground floor of a commercial complex, the perfect spot for a cosmetics showroom. The rent was $4,000 a month, plus utilities. The space is still available, the realtor informed her. But the landlord is in a hurry. If you're interested, it's best to move fast. There's always a wait list for spaces this size. I'm ready to sign the lease this week, Valerie answered confidently. I'll put down the 3 months' rent up front. That evening, she waited for Oliver to get home so she could share the exciting news. He walked in around 7, looking exhausted after a grueling day at a construction site. His face was tense, and his eyes betrayed a deep anxiety. "How are you, honey?" Valerie asked, serving dinner. "You look upset." "It's fine," Oliver grumbled, sitting down. "Just a lot of work. The clients are breathing down my neck, rushing the finishing work." Valerie decided to hold off on sharing her business news until the timing was better. Oliver clearly wasn't in the mood to discuss commercial leases. After dinner, he slumped in front of the TV, turned on the news, and zoned out. Around 9 p.m., his cell phone rang. Oliver glanced at the screen and quickly answered. "Hey, Mom." "Yeah, I'm home. How are you?" Valerie was in the master bathroom, doing her evening skincare routine. The door was slightly ajar, and her husband's voice carried clearly down the hall. "Of course, Mom, I promised," Oliver was saying, his voice lower than usual. "I'll have it all together by the end of the month. Did you find a good plot for the cabin?" Pause. "The owners want $45,000. We can probably negotiate that down." Valerie froze. What cabin? Oliver had never mentioned buying a lake cabin or a plot of land for his mother, and where on earth would he get that kind of cash? His salary was $6,000 a month, but out of that, he paid half their living expenses and gave his mother a monthly allowance. "Don't stress yourself out," Oliver continued. "The money is there, I've got it covered. The main thing is to make sure the title is clear. I'll drive up tomorrow, look at the lot one more time, and talk to the neighbors." Valerie stood completely still, her night cream suspended in her hand. Her husband had just promised his mother a massive sum of money to buy a cabin, but hadn't specified where the money was coming from. A nasty feeling began to knot in her stomach. "Listen, maybe we shouldn't rush?" Oliver's voice drifted in again. "Winter is coming. There will be more inventory in the spring." "No, you want this exact lot? Okay, Mom, whatever you say." The conversation lasted another 15 minutes. Oliver discussed the details of the purchase with his mother, the size of the acreage, the utility hookups, the condition of the small cabin on the property. He spoke enthusiastically, as if the cash were already sitting in his pocket. Valerie walked back into the living room just as he was hanging up. "All right, Mom, it's decided. Talk soon." "What's decided?" Valerie asked with a smile, trying to look innocent. Oliver looked slightly panicked, clearly not expecting her to have heard. "Oh, nothing. Mom is just looking at cabins upstate. She's always dreamed of having her own plot of land where she could garden and grow flowers." "Does she have enough money for that?" Valerie asked carefully. "Well, her social security isn't enough, obviously. I'll help her out a bit. She's my mother, I can't say no." Valerie nodded, but her anxiety didn't fade. Oliver was definitely hiding something. Promising $45,000 was way out of his budget. Even if he saved for a full year and gave his mother half his salary, he wouldn't come close. The next day, Valerie couldn't focus on work. Her mind kept looping back to that overheard conversation. She tried to find a logical explanation. Maybe Oliver took out a personal loan, or maybe he sold something valuable, or got a massive end-of-year bonus at work. That evening, she decided to ask him directly. But Oliver came home late, around 10 o'clock, looking even more exhausted than the day before. "Honey, I have great news," Valerie started during a late dinner. "I finally hit my $50,000 goal to expand the store. I'm meeting with the realtor tomorrow. We're going to sign the lease for the office space. Oliver looked up from his plate and stared at her intently. 50,000? Seriously? Are you sure you did the math right? Absolutely. The last payment cleared yesterday. Exactly $50,000 sitting in my dedicated business savings account. Good for you, he said, but his voice lacked any real joy. That's a serious amount of money. And how are things with your mom's cabin money? Valerie pressed gently. Care to share your plans? Oliver shrugged. Nothing's set in stone yet. We're looking at options, thinking about taking out a loan. Or maybe we can arrange seller financing. His answer was incredibly evasive. Valerie could feel he was lying. Yesterday, he told his mother, "The money is there, I've got it covered." Today, he was citing vague plans. On Saturday morning, Teresa arrived. She showed up without warning, as usual, hauling a massive bag of groceries and armed with plans for the entire weekend. "Hello, kids," she announced loudly, marching into the entryway. "How is youth treating you? Ollie, help me carry this bag. It's awfully heavy." Valerie mentally kissed her. Saturday plans goodbye. She had wanted to drive downtown to meet a supplier for a new skincare line. Now, she would be playing hostess. "Mom, why did you bring so much food?" Oliver asked, surprised, unloading jars, bags, and boxes. "We're not hosting you for a month. I want to make a proper pot roast for my future grandkids," Teresa declared. "Otherwise, they'll just eat store-bought junk full of chemicals. You have to eat right, get your vitamins." "What grandkids, Mom?" Oliver stammered. "We don't have kids yet." "Well, it's time to start." "Valerie, what do you think?" "You're already 29. The biological clock is ticking." Valerie forced a polite smile. "We're focusing on our careers right now, Teresa. Children are a massive responsibility." "Oh, what career?" Her mother-in-law waved her off. "The most important thing for a woman is family and motherhood. Your little online shop is just a hobby. A hobby that just banked $50,000, Valerie thought to herself, but she didn't say it out loud. After lunch, Teresa settled onto the sofa with a cup of tea and began scanning the apartment with an eagle eye. "Ollie, what are all those documents on the desk?" she asked, pointing to a thick binder containing Valerie's business plans. "Those are Val's work papers," her son replied. "Can I see? I'm curious what the youth are up to these days." Valerie tensed. That binder held her revenue projections, expansion plans, and bank statements, highly personal and confidential information. "There's nothing interesting in there, Teresa," Valerie said. "Just boring spreadsheets and charts." "Oh, come on, let me see," her mother-in-law insisted. "I used to do bookkeeping in my youth. I understand numbers." Oliver picked up the binder and handed it to his mother. Valerie wanted to object, but couldn't bring herself to start a shouting match over a stack of papers. Teresa slowly turned the pages, occasionally humming and shaking her head. "Wow, your cash flow isn't bad," she noted. "More than $20,000 moving through the accounts in a month. That's gross revenue," Valerie clarified. "The net profit is much lower. You have to subtract inventory costs, shipping, and taxes. And how much is left over? It varies. On average, maybe $4,500 a month." Her mother-in-law let out a low whistle. "Not bad for a little internet shop." "And what's this statement here?" She pointed to a printout from the high-yield savings account. "That's my business expansion fund," Valerie answered, trying to keep her voice level. $50,000, Teresa gasped. "Oh my goodness. Ollie, did you hear this? You have an absolute fortune sitting right here in the family." "Yeah, Mom, I know," Oliver mumbled. "But why is all that money just sitting there? Inflation is eating away at it, money loses value. You should invest it in something worthwhile." "I am going to invest it," Valerie said firmly. "I'm leasing commercial space to expand my business." Teresa shook her head thoughtfully. "That's very risky, running a business. Today you have income, tomorrow there's an economic crisis, and boom, it's all gone. It's much better to invest in real estate. In land, it's safer." "I love my business," Valerie replied flatly, "and I'm confident in my plans." Well, her mother-in-law drawled skeptically. "We'll see what time tells us." The rest of the weekend passed in a thick, tense atmosphere. Teresa constantly brought the conversation back to Valerie's savings. She lectured them on smart investments and cited examples of friends whose business ventures had failed. "Remember Nancy from my old building?" she said to Oliver. "She opened a boutique too, poured money into it for 3 years, and then lost it all. Said the competition was too fierce. Every case is different," Valerie argued. "You can't paint everyone with the same brush." "Maybe it is different," her mother-in-law agreed. "But money is serious business, especially that much money. It requires a man's touch, a sober calculation." Valerie could feel her irritation peaking. Her mother-in-law was heavily implying that the husband, not the wife, should dictate how large sums of money were spent. On Sunday evening, after Teresa finally packed up and left, Oliver suddenly brought up their finances. "Val, let's have a serious talk about your savings," he said. "What do you mean?" "Well, we're a family. Maybe it's time we merge our finances. Run a joint family budget?" Valerie was instantly on guard. In their 2 years of marriage, Oliver had never once brought this up. They each managed their own money independently, and the arrangement had worked perfectly. Why merge them now? "It's been perfectly convenient keeping them separate. You know, I think it will demonstrate our trust in each other. A real marriage means sharing not just our feelings, but our material resources too." "Very poetic," Valerie scoffed. "And practically speaking, what does that mean?" "We just pool our money into a joint account. We discuss major expenses together. It's only logical. A husband and wife should make important decisions jointly." Valerie smelled a trap. Oliver was using all the right words, but his tone betrayed ulterior motives. "Oliver, my savings are the result of 4 years of grinding. I saved that money for a very specific goal. Why change anything?" "What, do you not trust me?" her husband asked, feigning hurt. "I'm not going to blow your money. I just want everything between us to be fair and transparent." "It is transparent. You know what my income is. I don't hide my business plans. But keeping my funds separate somehow means we have secrets." Valerie looked at her husband intently. Was his phone call with his mother about the cabin really connected to her savings? Was Oliver actually planning to use her money for it? "All right," she said after a long pause. "Let's assume we open a joint account. If we disagree on a purchase, who has the final say? We'll negotiate, find compromises. Reasonable people can always find common ground. And if we don't," Oliver shrugged, "then the head of the household makes the decision." "Meaning you?" "Well, yeah, naturally. A man should take responsibility for the family budget." Valerie realized her worst suspicions were entirely justified. Oliver wanted to seize control of her money under the noble guise of a joint family budget. "You know what, honey?" she said, plastering on a fake smile. "Let's put a pin in this. I need some time to think." "How much time?" "Don't take 2 weeks. This is a big decision, but we shouldn't drag our feet." Oliver looked disappointed, but he nodded. "All right, but don't stall too long. The sooner we start a joint budget, the better for our family." That night, Valerie couldn't sleep. The events of the past few days played on a loop in her head. The overheard conversation about the cabin, her mother-in-law's intense scrutiny of her financials, and her husband's sudden push to merge their accounts. It all looked like a carefully orchestrated plan. First, Teresa assessed her daughter-in-law's financial health. Then, the son was tasked with gaining access to the cash. Buying a cabin for his mother was just a convenient excuse to spend someone else's savings. Valerie clenched her fists under the covers. If her gut was right, her husband and mother-in-law were actively plotting against her money. But she absolutely refused to be the victim of some family conspiracy. $50,000 was her blood, sweat, and tears. It was her dream, her future, and she was going to defend what was hers to the bitter end. The following week, Valerie kept a close eye on her husband's behavior. Oliver had become jumpy, often spacing out during conversations. Several times, she caught him hovering over her work documents. Whenever she walked into the room, he would hastily close her folders and put on an innocent face. "Are you looking for something in my papers?" she asked point-blank on Wednesday evening. No, I just got curious about how your business operates." Oliver replied, refusing to meet her eyes. I want to have a better understanding of what my wife does. You were never interested before. The scale was smaller before. Now you have serious money moving around. I want to be informed. Valerie didn't believe a single word. Oliver had never shown an ounce of interest in the nuances of her e-commerce platform. Yet now, the moment a massive pile of cash was on the table, he had suddenly become an inquisitive student of business. On Thursday, Teresa called and asked if she could come over for the weekend. Usually, she gave them 1 or 2 days' notice. Now she was booking her slot early. I have an important matter to discuss with you both, she said mysteriously. I want to bring it to the family. What matter? Valerie asked. Not over the phone. We'll talk in person. On Friday, Valerie decided to test her theory. She intentionally left her business expansion plans on the kitchen island, then slipped into the master bedroom, leaving the door cracked to listen. Oliver came home from work, ate dinner, and, exactly as she expected, began leafing through the papers. Then he pulled out his phone and dialed. Hey, Mom. Yeah, I checked. It's exactly like we discussed. Exactly $50,000 in a high-yield savings account. Valerie's blood ran cold. They had been discussing her money beforehand. Chase Bank. Yeah, Oliver continued. It's a liquid account. It can be withdrawn at any time. No, I don't know the passwords, but I'll try to find out tomorrow. He'll try to find out the passwords. Valerie had to bite her tongue to stop herself from bursting out of the bedroom and starting a screaming match right then and there. Listen, Mom, are you sure this is the right move? What if she figures it out? Teresa said something in response, but the words were muffled. Oliver listened, occasionally chiming in. Yeah, I get it. You're right, of course, family comes first. Okay, I'll figure it all out tomorrow. The main thing is to make sure she doesn't suspect anything prematurely. Bye. Valerie quietly slipped out the back door, walked around the block to calm her racing heart, and then returned. The picture was completely clear now. Her husband and her mother-in-law were conspiring to seize her money. How they planned to do it was the only missing piece of the puzzle. She unlocked the front door, pretending she had just gotten back from a friend's house. Hey, honey, how was your day? She asked innocently. Same old, Oliver replied, hastily shoving her documents back into the binder. Work, house, the usual stress. Mom is coming tomorrow, by the way. Yeah, she'll be here in the morning. Says she has an important conversation for us. I wonder what about. I don't know, her husband lied effortlessly. She'll tell us herself. That night, Valerie mapped out a strategy. She needed to draw out their exact plan and prepare her defenses. She decided to play the role of the trusting, clueless wife. On Saturday morning, Teresa arrived earlier than usual, around 9 a.m. She looked downright festive. She was even wearing an ivory blouse she usually saved for holidays. Good morning, kids. She greeted them, kissing her son and giving Valerie a nod. What gorgeous weather. The perfect time for making big decisions. During breakfast, Teresa was unusually animated. She told jokes, asked about their jobs, and complimented Valerie's homemade pancakes. She was clearly setting the stage for a major conversation, trying to cultivate a friendly atmosphere. Val, honey, let me see those business plans of yours again, her mother-in-law asked after breakfast. I didn't quite grasp everything last week. I'd like to really look it over. Valerie brought out the binder. Teresa studied every page intently, asking clarifying questions and taking notes on a notepad. Now this is interesting, she said, tapping a pen on the spreadsheet. Leasing the office is $4,000 a month, plus renovations, plus equipment. So you need at least $12,000 just to get the doors open. Roughly? Yes, Valerie agreed. And what if something goes wrong? What if the customers don't show, or competitors undercut you? That money just burns up, gone forever. Every business has risks. But I've studied the market. I have a loyal customer base and solid supplier logistics. Well, Teresa dragged out the words skeptically. But real estate now, that is a secure investment. Land always appreciates, especially if the lot is in a good location. Are you looking to buy a cabin? Valerie asked. Her mother-in-law exchanged a look with her son. I am, actually. I've dreamed my whole life of having my own little garden where I can plant potatoes and grow tomatoes. It's so good for retirees to spend time in the fresh air. And we've already found the perfect plot. We found it, Oliver interjected. Upstate, in a nice residential community, an acre of land with a small, cozy cabin. The owners are asking $45,000. That's expensive, Valerie noted. But the location is incredible, Teresa countered. Right next to the woods, a river, clean air. And the title is totally clear, no liens. Deals like this are rare. Do you have the money for it? Her mother-in-law paused, then let out a heavy sigh. That's the problem. My fixed income is small. My savings only amount to about $10,000. And Ollie spends his whole salary keeping this household afloat. It's hard for him to save, too. I see, Valerie nodded, waiting for the punchline. And then I had a thought. Teresa leaned forward, looking Valerie dead in the eye. We have money in this family that's just sitting around, doing nothing. You mean my business savings account? Your savings are intended for business development. But business is risky. A piece of land is an investment in our family's well-being. Think about it. We'll have a place to relax, spend weekends, celebrate holidays. When the kids come, they'll grow up in nature. Valerie felt her blood boil. This woman was calmly proposing to spend someone else's money to satisfy her own desires. Teresa, those are my personal savings. I worked for 4 years to save that money. Personal? Her mother-in-law acted shocked. But you're married. There's no such thing as personal money in a family. Everything is shared. Oliver and I agreed to keep our finances separate. Nonsense! Teresa waved her hand dismissively. A real family is one where a husband and wife share everything. You're acting incredibly selfish right now. Oliver remained silent, but Valerie could see he fully supported his mother. Listen to me, dear. Her mother-in-law continued in a softer, coaxing tone. I understand it's hard to part with the money, but think logically. The cabin will be jointly owned family property. You'll get to use it. Vacation there. Take the kids there. And if Oliver and I get a divorce, the cabin stays with you, and my money is gone. Teresa gasped in outrage. What kind of nonsense is that? Why would you even talk about divorce? Ollie loves you. You love him. Normal families don't divorce over silly little things, but the risk remains. There is no risk, Oliver finally chimed in. We aren't getting divorced. Why are you spinning out over nothing? Valerie realized the conversation had escalated into a coordinated assault. Her husband and mother-in-law had clearly rehearsed this, and were now pressuring her as a united front. All right, she said. Let's say I agree to give you the money for the cabin. What happens to my plans to expand the store? You postpone them for a year, Teresa shrugged. Nothing's stopping you from saving up again. You're young, you're healthy, you'll make it back. In a year, the market will change. Competitors will pull ahead. I'll lose my window of opportunity. If a business is truly strong, it won't disappear in a year, her mother-in-law argued. And if it's questionable, it's better not to throw money into it anyway. Valerie stood up from the table. I'm sorry, but I am not prepared to discuss this anymore. It's my money, my business plan, and my decision. There you go again, acting stubborn, Teresa said sourly. Your money, your plans. Where is the family solidarity? Where is the respect for your elders? Respect doesn't mean sacrificing my own life and interests. Your own interests? Her mother-in-law flared up. Who do you think you are? You're just a wife who walked into a ready-made family where everything was already structured, and suddenly you're dictating terms. Valerie froze. There it was, the absolute, unvarnished truth of how her mother-in-law saw her. Excuse me? What did you just say? I said exactly what I think. Teresa refused to back down. You are temporary here. Wives come and go, but family remains. Ollie and I are blood relatives. You are an outsider. Mom, what are you saying? Oliver weakly tried to intervene, but his voice lacked any real conviction. I'm speaking the truth, his mother snapped. Money should stay within the family, not be blown on an outsider's whims. An outsider's whims? Valerie repeated. Is that what you call it? What else is it? Your little shop is just playtime. It's not a real career. Playtime is over. It's time to grow up and think about the family. Valerie looked at her husband, waiting for him to defend her against his mother's blatant disrespect. But Oliver stayed silent, intently studying the pattern on the tablecloth. So, in your opinion, my 4 years of hard work is just a game? Work? Teresa snorted. Sitting at home on a computer taking orders is work? Real women work in factories, in hospitals, in schools. They don't post pretty pictures on the internet. That is enough, Valerie said quietly, her voice like ice. I am not going to stand here and be insulted in my own home. Your own home? Her mother-in-law mocked. And who pays the mortgage? Who pays the utility bills? I pay the mortgage entirely from my income. Oliver helps with the utilities. Helps? Teresa burst out laughing. He supports this family, and you help. You've got it twisted, honey. Valerie felt that if she stayed in the room a second longer, she would start screaming. She had to get out of the kitchen before the situation spiraled completely out of control. I'm going for a walk, she announced, heading for the front door. Go, go. Her mother-in-law waved her off. Get some fresh air and think long and hard about family values. Valerie walked out into the chilly air and paced the neighborhood for a long time, trying to organize her thoughts. The picture was completely, undeniably clear. Her mother-in-law viewed her as a temporary passenger in her son's life, a woman with no right to her own opinions or her own money. Oliver supported his mother, even if he was too cowardly to say it out loud. Their plan was obvious: try to sweet-talk her into it, and if that failed, break her down psychologically. An hour later, she returned to the condo. Teresa was sitting on the couch watching TV, acting as if nothing had happened. Well, cooled off? She asked. Ready to have a rational conversation? I'm ready, Valerie answered. My answer remains exactly the same. The money is mine, and I am not giving it to you. Teresa's face darkened. So you've decided to be stubborn to the bitter end. I'm not being stubborn. I'm protecting my rights. What rights? You're a wife, not the boss. Your duty is to help your family, not preach about rights. We live in the 21st century, not the Middle Ages. Times change, but family values don't, her mother-in-law stated piously. A wife should be wise and understanding, and a husband should be fair and just. Just and fair? Valerie shot back. Oliver flinched as if struck. Is that what you call plotting with your mother to take my money against my will? Nobody plotted anything, her husband protested defensively. We just offered a logical investment option. Logical for who? For you. Or for me. For the whole family, Teresa interjected. The cabin will be joint property. Whose name will be on the deed? Her mother-in-law hesitated. Well, mine, of course. I'm the primary buyer. So my money magically transforms into your property. How incredibly fair. We can work out the details. Oliver tried to smooth over the conflict. The main thing is getting a yes in principle. You are never getting a yes, Valerie said firmly. Find your money somewhere else. Teresa stood up from the couch and marched right up to her daughter-in-law. Listen to me very carefully, little girl, she said, her voice dropping to a low, threatening register. You're young and stupid, and you don't understand how the real world works. But I'll educate you. Valerie didn't take a single step back. I'm listening. Ollie is my only son. I raised him alone, I gave him everything, and I will not let some girl ruin our relationship. I'm not ruining your relationship. I just refuse to hand over my life savings. Money in a family needs to work for the family, not sit like deadweight in a bank. My bank account is not part of your family. Her mother-in-law smiled, a nasty, venomous grin. Oh, yes, it is. Everything a wife has belongs to her husband. That's the law. What law is that? Family law. In a marriage, assets become marital property. Valerie shook her head. Teresa, you have a very poor understanding of the law. Premarital assets remain sole property, and my business was operating long before the wedding. There are ways around the law, her mother-in-law said meaningfully. If there's a will, there's a way. What exactly does that mean? It means smart people always find a way to get what they need. Valerie felt a genuine physical threat in the older woman's words. This woman was absolutely not going to back down. Oliver, are you hearing what your mother is saying? Her husband gave a noncommittal shrug. Mom's just stressed. She's dreamed of this cabin for so long. And for that dream, she's ready to steal someone else's money. Not someone else's, family money, Teresa corrected. And not steal, redirect to more important goals. Valerie realized the conversation was a dead end. Her mother-in-law wasn't abandoning her plan, and her husband was entirely complicit. She needed to focus strictly on defense. All right, she said. Let's end this here. You've stated your position, I've stated mine. There is nothing left to discuss. Oh, there is plenty left to discuss, Teresa shot back. We are not done here. Ollie, tell your wife to be more accommodating. It's in her best interest. Oliver looked at his wife with pleading eyes. Val, just think it over again. Maybe we really should meet the family halfway. What family? All I see are two people trying to spend my money on themselves. We're offering an investment. You're offering to seize my savings under the guise of pretty words. Teresa sighed heavily. Fine. I see you refuse to do this the easy way, which means we'll just have to do it the hard way. The hard way? What does that mean? You'll find out. Her mother-in-law smiled cryptically. The rest of the weekend dragged by in a tense, suffocating silence. Teresa didn't bring up the money again, but Valerie could feel her piercing glares. The woman was clearly plotting something. On Sunday evening, as Teresa was packing her bags to leave, she cornered Valerie in the kitchen. My dear, she said with a sickeningly fake sweetness, think very hard about our offer. You have until the end of the week. And what happens at the end of the week? The sellers aren't going to wait around. They'll find other buyers, and we'll lose the opportunity. Let them. It has nothing to do with me. Her mother-in-law shook her head slowly. Oh, it does. It has much more to do with you than you think. After she finally left, Oliver tried one more time to reason with his wife. Val, let's find a compromise. Maybe not the whole sum, just part of it. Even $30,000 would be enough for a massive down payment. Oliver, are you deaf? I am not giving you a single dime for your cabin. But why? We're a family. Because you lied to me. First you scheme behind my back with your mother, then you try to bully me into it. This isn't a marriage. It's extortion. Nobody lied to you. You didn't? What about the phone call with your mom that I overheard? About my money? What was that? Oliver turned pale. You were eavesdropping? I overheard it. You and your mom were discussing my bank account and making plans on how to get it. We were just bouncing ideas around. Bouncing ideas on how to con your wife. How sweet. Oliver slumped onto the sofa and buried his face in his hands. You're getting it all wrong. Mom really wants that cabin, and I just want to help her. At my expense. At our expense. We're a family. If we're a family, why didn't you ask my opinion beforehand? Why were you scheming behind my back? Oliver remained silent. There was no answer to that. On Monday, Valerie made a decisive move. She drove to a completely different bank on her lunch break and opened a new high-yield savings account. She transferred the entire $50,000 balance over and completely closed the old Chase account. Now, even if Oliver somehow managed to bypass her security and access her old banking portal, he would find nothing but a zero balance. On Tuesday, her worst fears were confirmed. Valerie came home from work to find her husband sitting in her home office, typing on her personal laptop. What are you doing? She demanded sharply. Oliver jumped and quickly X'd out of the browser window. Oh, nothing. Just surfing the web. My laptop is acting up. My bank passwords are saved on that laptop. You know that. I wasn't looking at your bank accounts. Show me the browser history. Right now. Why? Show it to me, if you have nothing to hide. Oliver hesitated, shifting his weight, before letting out a defeated sigh and opening the browser history. Right at the top were multiple links to bank login portals, including her old bank. You tried to log into my account? I just wanted to look, just to make sure the money was still safe. Without my permission, Oliver. We're husband and wife, Val. We shouldn't have secrets. Valerie nudged him aside, sat down at her laptop, and checked the security logs on her banking profile. The system flagged 3 failed login attempts within the last hour. You tried to guess my password? Not guess, remember. I thought maybe you had mentioned it once. I have never, ever told you my bank passwords. Oliver pulled up a chair next to her. Val, why are you being like this? I wasn't doing it with malicious intent. I'm just worried about our savings. My savings too. And I will be the one worrying about them. But we're a family that tries to steal from each other. Nobody is stealing anything. I just wanted to verify everything was okay. Valerie shut the laptop and tucked it under her arm. Next time, ask permission. Val, don't be mad. I won't do it again. But Valerie no longer believed a single promise her husband made. It was glaringly obvious that he was fully prepared to commit fraud to get his hands on her money. On Wednesday, Teresa called and suggested they meet at a cafe. I want to talk to you, just the two of us, without Ollie. A heart-to-heart. Valerie agreed. She was morbidly curious to see what her mother-in-law had cooked up now. They met at a small bistro near the condo. Teresa looked downright friendly. She ordered a slice of cake and a coffee, and spent 30 minutes asking polite questions about the cosmetics business. You know, Valerie, her mother-in-law finally pivoted. I worked with people my whole life. I met all types in the accounting department, and I learned how to read what people really want. And what do I want? Valerie asked. You want to be independent. That's understandable. Modern girls are like that. But you're failing to consider one crucial thing, which is, absolute independence doesn't exist. We all depend on someone. You depend on your customers, your suppliers, the economy. Valerie stayed silent, waiting for the trap to spring. And in a family, there is also dependence, Teresa continued smoothly. A wife depends on her husband, a husband on his wife, and this dependence takes different forms. Clarify that for me. It can be voluntary and mutually beneficial. Or it can be forced. Valerie tensed. There was a thinly veiled threat in the older woman's voice. What exactly do you mean? I mean that Ollie has rights to your assets. Rights he simply hasn't exercised yet. What rights? Teresa calmly reached into her designer knockoff purse and pulled out several sheets of paper. Take a look at this, for example. The tax return for your business's income. Where do you think I got this? Valerie snatched the paper. It was an official IRS tax transcript detailing her LLC's income for the previous fiscal year. Where did you get this? Ollie requested it. A husband does not have the right to pull his wife's business tax returns without authorization. Oh, he does. Teresa smiled thinly. Read up on family law. A spouse can request financial disclosures to resolve marital disputes. Valerie inspected the document. It was real. Why do you have this? Because we are analyzing the situation. Assessing our options. What options? Teresa pulled out a second document. This is a draft of a legal complaint to declare a portion of your assets as jointly acquired marital property. Ollie had it drafted. Valerie read the top page. The complaint asserted that any business savings accumulated during the duration of the marriage were considered marital property and subject to a 50-over-50 split. This is a lie. My store existed before the wedding, but it expanded after the wedding and generated profit during the marriage, which means a significant portion of those savings can be legally classified as joint assets. You want to sue me? Why not? It's not a bad idea, her mother-in-law smirked. Let a judge sort out who owns what. Maybe the judge decides half that money is Ollie's. Valerie realized she had walked into a meticulously set trap. Her husband and mother-in-law had actually researched the legal loopholes and found a pressure point. But a lawsuit will take months, Valerie pointed out. The cabin will be sold long before then. We don't necessarily have to wait for a final verdict, Teresa explained cheerfully. We can file a motion for a temporary injunction to freeze the disputed assets. While the litigation drags on, the funds will be locked, and you won't be able to touch a single cent. Not you, not Ollie. But it also means you won't be expanding any store. Your money will just sit in an escrow account, gathering dust. Valerie felt her stomach drop with pure rage. Her mother-in-law had found a way to destroy her business plans, even if she couldn't get the cash for herself. This is blackmail. This is protecting family interests, Teresa countered. We don't want to drag this into a courtroom, but if you insist on being stubborn, so you're threatening me? We are offering a reasonable compromise. Hand over the money for the cabin voluntarily, and there will be no lawsuit. Everyone walks away happy. Valerie stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor. You know what, Teresa? You can take your threats and go straight to hell. Tesk, tesk, tesk. Her mother-in-law clucked her tongue. Such vulgar language. And you pretend to be such a well-mannered girl. Well-mannered people don't blackmail their own relatives. And selfish people don't refuse to help their family. Teresa shot back flawlessly. All right, my dear, it's your choice. But remember, we gave you fair warning. Valerie stormed out of the cafe, practically vibrating with fury. The situation had escalated into a full-blown crisis. Her husband and his mother were fully prepared to go nuclear, using every dirty legal trick in the book. When she got home, Oliver was waiting for her on the couch, looking like a whipped dog. So, did you have a good talk with Mom? We talked. She threatened to sue me. Val, it's not a threat. Mom was just explaining our legal rights. Your rights to my money. Our rights as a family. Valerie sat down across from him. Oliver, look me in the eye and answer honestly. Are you seriously prepared to sue me over my own savings? Her husband averted his gaze. It won't come to a lawsuit if you just act reasonably. So you are prepared. Val, why push it to the edge? Just give us the money for the cabin, and everything goes back to normal. And if I don't, Oliver stayed quiet for a long moment. Then we will protect our interests using every legal avenue available. Valerie realized there was absolutely no point in talking. Her husband was a spineless puppet wholly committed to his mother's scheme, even if it meant destroying his wife. The next day, she took an extended lunch break and paid a $300 consultation fee to see a family law attorney. The lawyer reviewed the situation and gave a grim prognosis. Technically, they have a leg to stand on, the attorney admitted. A portion of the income generated during the marriage could be deemed marital property, especially if the business benefited from marital funds or shared living arrangements. But the business was entirely self-funded. You would have to prove that in discovery. And in the meantime, while the case is litigated, a judge absolutely could grant a temporary restraining order freezing the disputed assets. How long would that take? Months. Maybe over a year, depending on the court's docket. Valerie left the lawyer's office feeling completely defeated. Her husband and mother-in-law really did have the power to paralyze her money out of pure spite. On Thursday evening, Teresa called. Well, honey, have you thought it over? Tomorrow is Friday, the absolute last day, to make your decision. What decision? We are closing on the cabin tomorrow. Either you transfer the funds, or our lawyer files the injunction paperwork at the courthouse on Monday morning. File it, Valerie said flatly, and hung up. On Friday morning, she woke up with a heavy sense of impending doom. Oliver was acting incredibly bizarre. He avoided her gaze, gave one-word answers, and was visibly sweating. What's wrong with you? She asked over coffee. Nothing. Just some issues at the job site. Paperwork stuff, nothing major. Valerie didn't buy it for a second. He was hiding something huge. As he left for work, Oliver kissed her on the cheek the first time he'd done so in a week. Have a great day, honey. You too. Around noon, Valerie's cell phone rang. It was a representative from her new bank. Hello, Valerie. We received a request in branch to change the access credentials and routing authorities on your high-yield savings account. We're calling to verify that you initiated this request. What request? I haven't submitted anything. That's highly unusual. Your husband is currently at one of our branches presenting a power of attorney that grants him full managerial control over your accounts. The notary stamps look legitimate, but given the large sum, our fraud department flagged it for verbal confirmation. Valerie's blood turned to ice. What power of attorney? I never signed any legal authorization for him. Hold on, let me check the scans. Yes, we have a general power of attorney here bearing your signature. It's a forgery. I never signed that document. In that case, we need you to come down to a branch immediately. We are freezing all outbound transfers and account operations, pending an investigation. Valerie literally dropped her work, grabbed her keys, and raced to the nearest branch. A bank manager brought her into a side office and showed her the documents. The transfer request was filled out in Oliver's handwriting. Attached was a legal power of attorney document, complete with a fake notary stamp and a signature that looked chillingly like hers. The signature is a very close match, the bank manager noted. But it is a forgery, Valerie stated with absolute certainty. I demand that you lock the account and file a fraud report with the police. We will, the manager assured her. But first we'll have to submit this to our internal fraud division for handwriting analysis. That will take some time. How much time? A week or two, minimum. Valerie signed a stack of fraud affidavits and walked out of the bank in a daze. The timeline clicked into place. This was their ultimate plan. First, try to guilt-trip her into handing it over. Second, threaten to freeze it with a lawsuit. Third, when all else failed, forge legal documents to steal it outright. Oliver wasn't home when she got back. He finally walked through the door late that evening, holding a bouquet of flowers and a box of expensive chocolates. I'm so sorry, honey, for everything, he said, holding out the gifts with a pleading smile. Let's just forget these stupid fights. Did Mom give up on the cabin? Valerie asked, her voice dead flat. She did. She realized we completely misunderstood her intentions. She says she doesn't want money tearing our family apart. Valerie didn't take the flowers. She didn't believe a single syllable. How incredibly noble of her. Exactly. So let's just go back to how things were. No more fighting over your savings. And what about the paperwork at the bank? Oliver froze. The smile melted off his face. What paperwork? The power of attorney you submitted today to hijack my account. The forged one. Oliver turned the color of ash. I don't know what you're talking about, Val. The bank called me Oliver. You tried to seize control of my account using forged legal documents. Val, it's a huge misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Valerie pulled a photocopy of the POA from her purse and threw it on the counter. This is your handwriting. And this is my forged signature. Oliver stared at the paper, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Maybe someone is trying to frame us. Set us up. Who? Your mother? Mom has nothing to do with this. Then who? Who else is trying to tear our marriage apart to get their hands on my 50 grand? Oliver slumped against the kitchen island, burying his face in his hands. Val, I didn't want to lie to you, but you did. I just thought, if I got access to the account, I could just show you the statements, prove the money was safe, and eventually convince you to let us use it for the cabin. You were planning to steal my life savings. Not steal, just borrow it. I would have paid you back. When? In 30 years? Oliver had no answer. And whose brilliant criminal mastermind idea was this? Yours or Mommy's? Mom just gave me some advice. She said spouses shouldn't hide assets from each other. Valerie looked at the man she had married and felt nothing but absolute disgust. She couldn't breathe the same air as him for one more second. Her husband wasn't just a liar. He was a literal felon. Pack your bags, she said with chilling calmness. What? Pack your bags and get out. Go live with your mother. Tonight. Val, please, don't make rash decisions. It's not rash. It's the most clear-headed decision I've made in 2 years. I finally see exactly who I married. We can go to counseling. We can fix this. Fix what? You tried to commit bank fraud to rob me. I was just trying to borrow it. With forged documents. That is a felony, Oliver. Oliver stood up, puffing out his chest slightly. You're not going to go to the police. I'm your husband. You were my husband, Valerie corrected him. Now, you're just a criminal who betrayed my trust. Val, think about our marriage. 2 years together. I am thinking about it. I'm realizing that for 2 years you were just playing a role, and the real you only just showed up. Oliver tried to step forward and hug her, but Valerie recoiled violently. Do not touch me. Pack your shit and get out. And if I refuse, then I leave. I own this condo, but I will go check into a hotel right now just so I don't have to look at your face. And tomorrow, I file the police report. Oliver finally realized she wasn't bluffing. His shoulders sagged. He walked silently into the master bedroom and began throwing clothes into a duffel bag. An hour later, he was standing at the front door. "Val, I really hope you calm down and rethink this," he said, his hand on the doorknob. "Call me when you've cooled off. Don't hold your breath. What about our love?" "What love?" "You were ready to steal $50,000 from me for your mommy's cabin. Is that your definition of love?" Oliver opened his mouth to reply, thought better of it, and walked out. Valerie slammed the door behind him and locked the deadbolt. Her 2-year marriage had evaporated in a single afternoon, but she felt no sorrow, only a massive, crushing wave of relief. She had finally seen the true faces of her husband and his mother. For 3 days, Valerie lived alone and luxuriated in the peace and quiet. No one monitored her spending. No one snooped through her business plans. No one plotted to steal her future. She even managed to meet with the commercial realtor and officially reserve the office space for her store's expansion. On Wednesday evening, her phone rang. It was Teresa. "Valerie, honey, how are you? Oliver is staying with me. He told me about your little fight. He's absolutely devastated, poor boy." "Let him be devastated," Valerie replied coldly. "My dear, why are you being so cruel? People make mistakes. You have to learn to forgive. Some mistakes are unforgivable." "Oh, stop it." Ollie didn't have malicious intent. He just wanted to help his family. "By trying to commit felony bank fraud to steal my savings?" Teresa sighed dramatically. "You exaggerate everything. Nobody stole anything. We just wanted to borrow the funds for an important investment, without my permission, using forged documents. The details don't matter. The intentions were good." Valerie was genuinely astounded by the woman's audacity. Her mother-in-law sincerely believed that identity theft and bank fraud were minor, irrelevant details, not worth fussing over. "Teresa, Oliver, and I are getting a divorce. We have absolutely nothing left to discuss." "Divorce?" the older woman shrieked. "Are you out of your mind? Destroying a family over some money? Over lies and betrayal?" "What betrayal? A husband wanted to help his mother buy a cabin. That is noble. With stolen money. How many times do I have to say it?" Valerie rubbed her temples, exhausted by the circular insanity. "I'm done. Tell Oliver to file the divorce papers. I won't contest them." "Wait, don't hang up," Teresa yelled. "I have a business proposition for you. I don't care. We should meet tomorrow. I found a compromise that will satisfy everyone. I'm not interested in any of your compromises." "You should be, because the cabin is already bought." Valerie froze. "What do you mean, bought?" "Exactly what it sounds like. Ollie signed the purchase agreement yesterday. He put down a $5,000 earnest money deposit." "Where did he get $5,000? "He borrowed it from friends, using your savings account as a guarantee. He told them his wife was transferring the full balance by Friday." Valerie's vision actually went dark for a second. The rage was blinding. "So, you used my money as collateral, without even having access to it?" "Well, technically yes, but it's just a formality. The important thing is that the cabin is locked in." "You people are completely insane. How can you promise money that isn't yours?" "It's not yours, it's family money. And look, it's totally reversible. If you don't give us the money to close the deal, we'll just cancel the contract." "And the deposit?" "The earnest money is non-refundable. We lose it. But hey, it's only $5,000, not a huge loss for someone as rich as you." Valerie realized she had walked into yet another, even more devious trap. Her mother-in-law and soon-to-be ex-husband had intentionally engineered a hostage situation where refusing to pay meant blowing up $5,000 of family money. "Teresa, you have completely lost your mind. I am not giving you a single penny." "Then we'll come by tomorrow and take the money ourselves," her mother-in-law said, her voice dropping all pretense of sweetness. "Take it how?" "Very simply. We have keys to your condo. We have drafted legal documents stating the assets are disputed marital property. We will walk in and take what is rightfully ours. That is called robbery. That is called protecting family interests. See you tomorrow, dear." Teresa hung up, leaving Valerie staring at her phone in absolute shock. They had just openly threatened to invade her home and rob her. Valerie didn't hesitate. She immediately called an emergency 2-4-hour locksmith and had the deadbolts and doorknobs completely replaced. Then she drove straight to the local police precinct and filed a formal report about the threats and potential home invasion. The desk sergeant listened to her story and promised to have patrol cars keep a close eye on her building. "But you have to understand, ma'am," he cautioned. "If they show up claiming he lives there and waving around documents claiming marital property, it becomes a civil matter, a gray area. It's best resolved in family court. But if they try to force entry or get violent, call 911 immediately. We'll be there." On Thursday, Valerie took a sick day from work and stayed locked in her condo, waiting for the inevitable invasion. Around noon, the doorbell rang. She looked through the peephole and saw Oliver and Teresa standing in the hallway. "Val, open up!" "We came to talk," Oliver shouted. "We have nothing to talk about. Open the door or we'll let ourselves in." Teresa threatened loudly. "Your keys won't work." I changed the locks. Dead silence fell over the hallway. Then, the sound of furious, muffled arguing. "Have you completely lost your mind?" Oliver roared, pounding on the door. "This is my home, too." "Not anymore. The deed is in my name. I get mail here. My residency is established here. I have a legal right to be inside. You had a right. Now go live with your mommy." Teresa stepped right up to the door, her voice shrill. "Valerie, open this door immediately. We need to collect some belongings." I packed Oliver's clothes into trash bags. "You can pick them up from the lobby." "Not clothes. Money. Our money." "I don't have your money." "What do you mean you don't? You have 50,000 sitting in an account. That is my personal property." Silence fell again. Then, Oliver switched tactics, dropping his voice to a smooth, pleading tone. "Val, come on. Let's just sit down face to face and hash this out. We're civilized adults. Civilized adults don't commit identity theft. I already apologized for that stupid mistake. Let's forgive each other and start over." "No. Val, please. I know I screwed up, but we can fix this." "Nothing can be fixed. The trust is dead." Teresa lost whatever thin shred of patience she had left. "Enough of this circus. Val, either you open this door, or we break it down." "Try it," Valerie challenged. "I already filed a police report. We don't give a damn about the police. We're reclaiming our property." "Your property? Or my life savings?" Valerie realized engaging with them was pointless. She stepped away from the door and sank into an armchair in the living room, waiting for their next move. For the next half hour, Oliver and his mother alternated between banging on the door, demanding entry, and shouting threats. Then the noise stopped. Valerie thought they had given up and left, but she was wrong. Peeking through her living room window, she saw Oliver pacing the sidewalk below, talking frantically on his cell phone. A few minutes later, a beat-up pickup truck pulled up to the curb. Two rough-looking men got out. Valerie's heart spiked. Her husband and mother-in-law had clearly hired muscle to force their way in. She immediately grabbed her phone and dialed 911. 911. "What is your emergency?" "Hi. I filed a report yesterday about a potential home invasion. The people who threatened me are outside my building right now, and they just brought two strange men with them. Please send someone." She gave the dispatcher her address. "Units are en route. Do not open the door for anyone." 10 minutes later, her doorbell rang again. This time, it was a long, sustained, aggressive buzz. "Val, open the door." "I brought a locksmith." "We're drilling the lock right now," Oliver yelled through the wood. "I wouldn't advise that. The police are already on their way." "What police? We aren't doing anything illegal. I live here." From the other side of the door came the loud, metallic scraping of tools. Someone was actively trying to pick or drill her new deadbolt. Valerie retreated to the furthest corner of her bedroom, phone clutched in her sweaty hands, ready to call dispatch again. But a few minutes later, the scraping stopped. "It's not working," a gruff, unfamiliar voice said. "It's a high-security lock, anti-drill pins." "What about the windows?" Teresa asked. "It's the 3rd floor, lady. No balcony. I ain't climbing a drain pipe. That's suicide." "Then we'll just have to wait her out," Oliver declared. She has to leave eventually. Valerie realized they were literally laying siege to her home. She crept back to the living room window and peered out. Oliver and Teresa had commandeered a park bench across from the building entrance. The two hired guys were leaning against the pickup truck, smoking. 20 agonizing minutes later, a black and white cruiser pulled into the complex. Two officers stepped out and walked straight toward the group. Valerie cracked her window open and yelled down, "Officers! Those people threatened me and just tried to drill my lock." One of the officers looked up. "Are you the one who filed the report?" "Yes." Valerie Vane. "Stay put, ma'am. We'll handle this." The officers approached Oliver and Teresa. A heated conversation began that Valerie couldn't quite make out. Oliver was waving his arms, pointing at the building, and aggressively shoving documents at the police. Teresa was gesturing wildly, clearly playing the victim. 10 minutes later, one of the officers buzzed her intercom and came up to her floor. "Officer Peterson." He introduced himself through the door. "May I come in?" Valerie unlocked the door and let him into the entryway. "What did they tell you?" "The gentleman claims he has established residency here, gets his mail here, and has a legal right to access the premises. He says you're having a marital dispute over finances, and he just wants to collect his share of the property. He doesn't live here anymore. He moved out. We're getting a divorce. And I have the deed to the condo." Valerie pulled the mortgage paperwork and the title showing her as the sole owner from a drawer. "And does he have documents proving he has a claim to disputed assets?" "He has forged ones. He literally tried to commit wire fraud at my bank using a fake power of attorney." Officer Peterson reviewed the title documents. "I see. In that case, since you are the sole title holder and he is no longer a welcome guest, he has no legal right to force entry against your will. I'll go down and ask them to disperse. And if they come back, call us. We'll arrest them for disturbing the peace and trespassing." The officer went back downstairs. Through the window, Valerie watched him speak to Oliver and Teresa. They argued furiously, but eventually, the hired guys got in their truck and drove off, and Oliver and his mother angrily got into Oliver's sedan and left. Officer Peterson buzzed her phone. "We got them to leave, ma'am. But they promised they're coming back tomorrow with their lawyer. Be prepared for a long fight. Thank you so much for your help. Anytime. But honestly, you need to get this in front of a family court judge as soon as possible." That evening, Valerie felt completely drained. The adrenaline crash left her shaking. The day had been a constant state of terror, and tomorrow promised a fresh wave of conflict. She needed support. She picked up her phone and called her mother. Helen Carter lived 2 hours away in a neighboring city. She worked as an ER attending physician. They talked often, but Valerie had always kept her marital problems to herself, not wanting her mother to worry. "Hi, Mom. How are you?" "I'm fine, sweetheart. How are you?" "You sound exhausted." "I am. I'm having some major issues here." "What kind of issues?" "Oliver and I are divorcing." Valerie poured out the entire horrifying saga, the secret cabin, the bank fraud, the forged documents, and today's attempted home invasion. Her mother listened in absolute, stunned silence, only occasionally whispering, "My God." "So that's where we're at," Valerie finished, her voice thick with unshed tears. "They swore they're coming back tomorrow with a lawyer." "Valerie, where are you right now?" "I'm at home." "Stay right there. Lock the doors." "I'm leaving right now." "Mom, you don't have to do that. I can handle it." "Handle it." These people are dangerous. If they're willing to forge legal documents and hire thugs to drill your locks, what else are they capable of? "I am not leaving you alone with them, but you have your shift at the hospital." "My daughter is more important than my shift." "I'll cover it. I'm leaving in an hour. I'll be there past midnight." Valerie felt a massive weight lift off her chest. Her mother was a force of nature who always knew how to navigate a crisis. Helen Carter arrived at 12:30 a.m. She was a sharp, energetic woman in her 50s. She looked exhausted from the dark highway drive, but her eyes were blazing with determination. "All right, tell me everything again." "From the top," she demanded, shrugging off her coat. "Who the hell do these people think they are?" Valerie walked her through the timeline again, showed her the forged POA copy she had snatched from the counter, and laid out the financial documents. I see, Helen nodded grimly. A textbook case of financial abuse and family fraud. Your husband and his mother decided to treat you like an ATM, and I thought he actually loved me. He loved your checking account. He used you. It is agonizing to realize you wasted 2 years on a con artist, but thank God you figured it out before they drained you dry. Imagine if they had succeeded. You'd be left with nothing. They're coming back tomorrow. With a lawyer. Let them come. I'd love to see what kind of bottom-feeding ambulance chaser agrees to represent a pair of fraudsters. On Friday morning, Helen helped Valerie prep for the inevitable showdown. They organized all the documents proving Valerie's sole ownership of the condo and the premarital origins of the business. They taped the phone numbers for Valerie's lawyer and the local precinct to the fridge. The most important thing is that under no circumstances do you open that door, Helen instructed, pacing the living room. If they get a foot inside, they will instigate a physical altercation or try to ransack the place for your banking info. Do not let them cross the threshold. What if the lawyer demands entry? Let him demand. We have rights, and we are going to enforce them. Around 1 p.m., a knock echoed through the condo. It wasn't the aggressive pounding from the day before. It was a firm, professional knock. Miss Vane? My name is Mr. Crawford. I am the attorney representing Oliver and Teresa Vane. May we speak? About what? Valerie called through the solid oak door. About a peaceful resolution to this marital dispute. My clients are prepared to offer a compromise. What kind of compromise? If we could just sit down face to face, I'm confident we can find a mutually agreeable solution. Helen caught Valerie's eye and gave a sharp nod. Play along. Let's hear what they're plotting. Fine. But we talk through the door. Nobody is coming inside. I understand your apprehensions. I can accommodate that. Valerie heard shuffling feet in the hallway. It was obvious Oliver and Teresa were lurking right behind the lawyer. All right, let's get down to business, Crawford began smoothly. My clients are aware that you categorically refuse to release marital funds for the acquisition of real estate. They are not marital funds. They are my personal savings. That is a highly contested point of law. Income generated during the tenure of the marriage is generally considered community or marital property, depending on the jurisdiction. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. That's for a judge to decide. Precisely. But a contentious divorce and forensic accounting will take months, perhaps years. During that entire period, the assets in question will be frozen by court order. My clients are aware that this would be highly detrimental to you, but it is also detrimental to them, as they have already incurred financial liabilities regarding the real estate purchase. Those are their liabilities. Nobody forced them to sign a contract using money that wasn't theirs. The lawyer paused, evidently conferring in hushed tones with his clients. Very well. My clients are prepared to make a significant concession. They are willing to accept a settlement of $30,000 rather than the full $50,000. I am not giving them a single penny. $20,000. That is the absolute minimum required to close the deal. $0. Miss Vane, you are putting your husband's family in severe financial jeopardy. The earnest money deposit has been paid. The contract is executed. If this deal falls through, Oliver will personally lose $5,000. Let him lose it. Not my problem. A loud, venomous hiss echoed from the hallway. Teresa was clearly losing her mind over the failed negotiation. In that case, Crawford resumed, his tone hardening, my clients will be forced to file a petition with the family court to compel the division of assets. File it. I'm not afraid of court. And file an emergency injunction to freeze the disputed accounts. You do realize this will paralyze your business expansion indefinitely. I realize it. And I would rather freeze my business for 5 years than hand my money over to criminals. The word criminals triggered an explosion in the hallway. What criminals? Oliver roared, shoving past the lawyer to yell at the door. We're your family. Family doesn't forge power of attorney documents. Valerie shot back. That was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding is forgetting to take out the trash, not committing identity theft to hijack a bank account. Teresa couldn't hold back any longer. She shoved her son aside and screamed at the door. Listen to me, you little brat. Stop being so stubborn. Hand over the money and you can live in peace. Teresa, watch your mouth. Helen's voice cut through the door, sharp as a scalpel. And who the hell are you? The mother-in-law gasped, shocked by the new voice. I am Valerie's mother, Helen Carter, and I will not allow you to speak to my daughter like a stray dog. Aha! Mommy rushed to the rescue. Teresa cackled maliciously. How old is this girl? 29? And she's still hiding behind her mommy's skirt. Better to hide behind a skirt than try to rob your own family blind. Helen fired back. We are not robbing anyone. We are taking what belongs to us. Not a single red cent belongs to you. Attorney Crawford tried desperately to regain control of the narrative. Please, let's refrain from personal attacks. My job here is to facilitate a compromise that works for everyone. The only compromise that works for me, Valerie stated loudly, is if they crawl back into whatever hole they came from and leave me alone. But there are binding financial obligations at play here. Their obligations. Not mine. Furious shouting erupted in the hallway again. Then Oliver's voice returned to that sickening, pleading whine. Val, please, just think about it. My mom worked her entire life. She's dreamed of having a little cabin in the woods. Can't you just find it in your heart to help someone you love? Someone you love doesn't try to steal your life savings. I explained that. It was just a stupid mistake. A mistake you spent a month planning? How long were you plotting this heist? We just wanted to ask nicely. Asking nicely doesn't involve fraud and extortion. Teresa's patience finally snapped entirely. That's it. I am done with this circus. Val, if you don't hand over that money voluntarily, we are coming in and taking it by force. I'd like to see you try. Valerie dared her. Oh, we'll try. Ollie, do it. How much longer are we going to stand here arguing with this bitch? Heavy, decisive footsteps echoed in the hall. Oliver was moving toward the door. Let the record show that I, Attorney Crawford, am removing myself from these premises, the lawyer announced loudly, his voice tinged with panic. The subsequent actions of my clients are entirely against my legal counsel. The rapid sound of retreating dress shoes confirmed the lawyer was fleeing the scene. Well now, my dear daughter-in-law, Teresa sneered, her voice dripping with malice. We're all alone. Now we can have a real heart-to-heart. Talk all you want, you're not getting inside. Oh, we are getting inside. The horrifying mechanical grinding of heavy tools hit the door. It was much louder and more violent than yesterday. Mom, Valerie whispered, panic finally gripping her throat. What if they actually break through? They won't. That's a solid core door. Helen pulled out her cell phone and dialed 911. Yes. Hello? Police? My daughter and I are trapped inside her condo, and her estranged husband is actively drilling through the front door. Please hurry. Let them call the cops. Teresa shrieked from the hallway. By the time they get here, we'll have what we came for. The lock screamed as metal ground against metal. Oliver was using a heavy-duty power drill, practically leaning his entire body weight into it. It's giving way. Valerie backed away from the door. The unmistakable crack of the deadbolt housing, shattering, echoed like a gunshot. 5 agonizing minutes after it began, the heavy oak door burst inward, slamming against the drywall. Oliver and Teresa stormed into the entryway. Oliver looked manic, his face covered in sweat and metal shavings. Teresa looked triumphant, like a conquering general. Well, finally, Teresa crowed, stepping over the ruined lock mechanism. I thought we'd be drilling until sunset. Valerie and her mother retreated further into the living room. You have absolutely no right to be in here, Helen shouted. This is breaking and entering. I have every right, Oliver yelled, chest heaving. My legal address is listed here. You moved out. We are getting a divorce. We aren't divorced yet. That means I have full access to my own home. Teresa ignored them, her eyes darting around the condo like a hawk. All right, where are the financial documents? Val, hand over the bank statements and the routing numbers. No. Give them to me. Oliver took a menacing step forward. We are not leaving this apartment until we get what we came for. You're not getting anything. I am legally entitled to half of our jointly acquired assets, and Mom is entitled to compensation for emotional distress. What emotional distress? For you, destroying our family over pure greed, Teresa snapped. Helen stepped protectively in front of Valerie. Young man, you need to turn around and walk out that door immediately. You are actively committing a felony. What felony? I'm securing my assets. You broke down a door to commit robbery. In my own home, Teresa marched past them, heading straight for the kitchen. She began ripping open drawers and cabinets, tearing through papers and mail. Where is the money? Where are the checkbooks? Nowhere, Valerie said, her voice shaking but defiant. What do you mean, nowhere? I spent the $50,000. It's gone. Teresa froze, a fistful of takeout menus in her hand. She slowly turned to stare at her daughter-in-law. What did you spend it on? Expanding my business. I wired the entire balance as a commercial deposit for my new office space. You're lying. I'm not. Check for yourself. Oliver closed the distance between them, his face inches from Valerie's. Stop playing games, Val. We know you still have the money. Give it to us. No. Give it to me. Oliver lunged, grabbing Valerie's purse off the armchair. He violently yanked it open and dumped the contents on the floor. Valerie tried to wrestle the bag away from him, but he shoved her hard in the chest, sending her stumbling back. Where are the debit cards? I won't tell you. You will. Teresa abandoned the kitchen and started ransacking the home office, flipping over the desk and dumping out file boxes. Oliver grabbed Valerie by the wrist, his grip like a vice. Where are the cards? Where are the new account documents? He demanded, shaking her arm. Let me go, Valerie screamed, trying to pull away. I won't let go until you tell me. Helen tried to wedge herself between them, but Oliver violently shoved the older woman back. Back off! This is family business. This isn't family business. You're a violent thug, Helen screamed, scrambling to her feet. At that exact moment, a triumphant shriek came from the office. Teresa emerged, holding a bright red manila folder. Ollie, I found them. The bank transfer receipts. Teresa clutched the papers like a holy relic, her eyes scanning the printouts. Aha! The high-yield savings account. $50,000. See, she lied. Oliver dropped Valerie's wrist and lunged toward his mother. Give them to me. Valerie scrambled off the floor and tried to intercept him, grabbing for the folder, but Oliver was faster. He ripped the folder from his mother's hands, clutching it to his chest. Are you out of your mind? He roared at Valerie, his face purple with rage. I promised this money to my mom. Teresa had already snatched the crucial routing document with the $50,000 balance and was making a break for the ruined front door. But she stopped dead in her tracks, the color draining instantly from her face. Standing in the shattered doorway were two uniformed police officers, flanked by Officer Peterson. What exactly is going on here? Officer Peterson asked, his hand resting casually on his utility belt. Teresa froze, the bank document trembling in her hand. Oliver turned white as a sheet, the manila folder slipping slightly in his grip. We're just sorting out some family business, officers, Oliver stammered, his voice cracking. What family business? Helen yelled, pointing a shaking finger at them. They broke down our door with a power drill and physically assaulted us to steal my daughter's bank information. We weren't stealing anything, Teresa shrieked, her voice pitching into a panicked whine. It's our money. Officer Peterson looked at the splintered door frame, the shattered lock resting on the floor, and the trashed living room. Sir, who broke this door down? I did, Oliver admitted, swallowing hard. But it's my home. My name is on the mailbox. Having mail delivered here does not give you the legal right to destroy property and force entry against the sole homeowner's will, the officer stated coldly. Especially not after I explicitly warned you yesterday. Helen marched right up to a paralyzed Teresa. Give me back my daughter's property. No. It's ours. You have nothing, Helen barked, and cleanly snatched the banking documents right out of Teresa's hand. Ow! Officers! She assaulted me. She hit me. Teresa wailed, clutching her hand and dropping to her knees in a pathetic display of theatrics. Nobody touched you, Helen said calmly, handing the papers back to Valerie. The officers had seen enough. They moved into the room, pulling out handcuffs. Oliver Vane, Teresa Vane, you are both under arrest for breaking and entering, trespassing, and destruction of property. Turn around and put your hands behind your backs. As the officers cuffed them and hauled them out into the hallway, Teresa fought like a wildcat, screaming back at the apartment. You're going to regret this, Val. We're taking you to court. We'll get every last penny. A month later, the divorce was finalized. True to his mother's threat, Oliver hired another lawyer and tried to claim half the savings in family court. He lost spectacularly. The judge reviewed the timeline, the police report from the break-in, and the business inception dates, ruling definitively that the savings were premarital, sole and separate property belonging entirely to Valerie. The cosmetics store expanded just as she had planned. The new downtown office and showroom brought in a massive influx of retail profit. Valerie stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of her new office, looking out over the bustling city streets. It hurt to realize that 2 years of her life had been wasted on a man who turned out to be a pathological liar and a thief. But she had survived it. And now, she was truly free, independent, and secure. It's infinitely better to be alone, she thought, taking a sip of her coffee, than to sleep next to a traitor. She smiled, turned away from the window, and went back to work. There is no more source material left to adapt. 3 years had passed since the day the heavy oak door of Valerie's condo had been splintered by a power drill. In the time since, Valerie's life had moved at a breakneck, exhilarating pace. Her initial $50,000 investment had paid off tenfold. The downtown showroom for Boundless Beauty wasn't just a shop anymore. It had become a flagship destination. She had successfully launched her signature line of organic serums, hired a dedicated staff of 6, and her monthly net profit now dwarfed what she used to make in a year. She sold the condo in the suburbs, using the equity to put a down payment on a gorgeous, modern townhouse closer to the city center. She had also paid her mother, Helen, back for her unwavering support with a 2-week, all-expenses-paid vacation to Tuscany. They had sat on a terrace overlooking the vineyards, clinking glasses of Chianti, celebrating the unbreakable bond between a mother and daughter who knew how to stand their ground. As for Oliver and Teresa, the universe and the justice system had delivered exactly what they earned. The break-in had disastrous consequences for them. While they managed to avoid hard prison time by taking plea deals for trespassing and property destruction, they were slapped with years of strict probation, court fees, and a permanent criminal record. When Oliver's construction firm caught wind of his arrest for attempting to rob his own wife, he was unceremoniously fired. With a fresh misdemeanor and a pending fraud investigation hanging over his head, no reputable project management company would touch him. Last Valerie had heard through a mutual acquaintance, Oliver was working as a cashier at a big-box hardware store, making a fraction of his old salary. Teresa's dream of a serene lake cabin had evaporated entirely. The $5,000 earnest money deposit was surrendered when the contract fell through. Without Oliver's generous monthly allowance, she could barely afford her rent. Oliver had been forced to move back into his mother's cramped, one-bedroom apartment. The two of them were now trapped in a miserable, suffocating living arrangement, constantly blaming each other for the spectacular collapse of their scheme. It was a busy Friday evening at the Boundless Beauty showroom. Valerie was wrapping up a successful launch event for a new holiday collection. The space was bright, smelling of lavender and citrus, filled with laughing customers and the cheerful chatter of her employees. As the last few guests trickled out, Valerie walked over to the front door to flip the open sign to closed. She paused for a moment, looking out through the glass at the busy downtown street. She caught her own reflection in the window. She looked older, yes, but her posture was impeccably straight, and her eyes held a fierce, unshakable confidence. She remembered the girl who used to bite her tongue and try to appease a toxic mother-in-law to keep the peace. That girl was gone, forged by fire into a woman who knew exactly what she was worth and knew how to protect it. Valerie locked the heavy deadbolt on her storefront with a satisfying click. She turned off the main lights, grabbed her designer coat, and walked out into the crisp evening air, completely free and exactly where she was always meant to be.